Grand Rising, everyone. Hope everyone's well today. Today, I wanted to discuss about the ego and ego work. And many times we hear about let the ego go, something about let go my ego or ego. And and many times we're like, what is that? Like, and we just go along with what people are saying. Yeah, let the ego go. But do we know what the ego is? And do we know how to do the ego work of to kind of begin to let go of that ego, which basically the ego is anything that comes after I. And it can just be things that such as labels, like anything that how we define the self, or even things how we define others, how we the concept or ideas what others are, even the world what it is or what it should be. So it's just a definition of something that is not who we are, but it's something a small part of ourselves. And many times, like, we're not aware of this part that goes in our minds, that ego. We lack awareness of this idea of like that runs are in our minds. You know what I mean? Like, we don't, sometimes many of us that we're not aware that the ego, that we're just living in the ego. Like, I think because many times that's we are attached to these labels, these ideas, these evaluations, these judgments, which we get, with observation, conditioning, family, culture, and it's nothing to blame. It's just that's, it gets conditioned through the years, which that's who we define and begin to describe ourselves. And so, how do we break away of it? Sometimes when we lack awareness of it, many times we get offended. Um, we get there. We get like we argue because we run into people that we tend to talk to people or anyone that they might think differently. And many of that times that our ego or that part of ourselves gets challenged. It gets hurt, it gets poked, you know what I mean? Like, and we get very sensitive about that, like, and which we begin to, there's a lot of emotions with that. So, like fear and argument, getting defensive, like, because that's an attachment. That's like something that a part of ourselves that we're attached and we feel like we need to defend because we assume that that's defined of who we are, but knowing that there is much more of us than that, than these labels that been put on us, even we put on ourselves. So how do we break away from that? That's like, because many times that's working within the self. This is not an outer self doing, this is an inner self work, inner work, and it's dealing more of the mind. So many times, like, when become aware of the ego, is noticing this dialogue. This is always ongoing, this narrative that we are telling ourselves, like, what is this repetition that's going in my head of who I am, like, what if I, because, and then when we begin to notice, we become more of a witnesser. It doesn't mean I'm like not reacting. I'm still reacting and still getting emotion, but I've noticed I've become more like, huh, more like stepping back and witnessing, and noticing this thing, this ego, what it's saying consistently in our head. I am this, I am that, and this and that. So, and the second stage and the third stage, there's a lot of stages. I don't even know. We become a witnesser. We become a witness of our thoughts. Stepping back and noticing and observing these thoughts that are passing along in our minds and our heads, and noticing these triggering situations that I guess that we feel that when it begins to, I guess when we get triggered by people, when they say certain things that doesn't align to our own objective, we become more responsive than reactive, because reactive is more of an impulsive behavior, like but inside of us, we're like, we notice, but you become more responsible of choosing. Now it's a choice, like you choose how to want to respond, like you have more space, you know and then on, like, I guess I notice along the way, you begin to, like, there's this integrating your awareness with this ego, like, knowing that it's evolving. I guess that's when enlightenment, that, you become less and less like thinking that, excuse me, sorry, that these labels is really you, knowing that this was not really you. There's more of you. There is more of you this whole time. It's just sometimes we get very attached, because this is how I grew up, this is what I was been told, this is how it should be, this is how it has to be. And then we'll begin to notice those thoughts. I was like, no, I have a choice. And knowing that, and what we're doing is our consciousness becoming more aware. um Honestly, I really don't like to use the word woke, because it's becoming, to me, meaningless. Like, we're overusing that word, but it's really the conscience of the self, like of your own self. It's not like, oh, how this person. No, it's just yourself, your mind. And many times, like, are we still, and many times these, just because we go from first stage, second stage, all this stuff, it doesn't mean like, oh, I'm enlightened. No, sometimes as myself, I see myself sometimes still getting emotional. Sometimes I'm a witnesser, or like, it fluctuates, and it's just an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process. And I wonder where I left my poem, because I actually had a poem that I wanted to share. Nah, I'll share it later. I post it on the thing. But knowing that you're more than these thoughts, like, know that you're more than these labels that society has placed on us. You're more than what expected of this culture. Sometimes we want to say, no, you're this because you look like this. This is where you came from. This is who you should be. This is what you must do. This is what you must believe. And no, that's not it. You can be much more than that if you allow yourself and give yourself permission to be much more. And that is just slowly letting go of these labels of what was been placed and conditioned, and know that you are much more than who you are, than what you are right now. And you know who you can be, because your higher self, your true self, is just waiting for you. And if you like this, just put the little heart button, the like button. If you have any questions, um, message me or comment below. And I wish you many blessings. And here, give yourself permission to be who you always been, like who you always been before. Like, these labels, and even sometimes we get these labels from friends, but know that you're much more than that. But it all begins to the mind, and it begins stripping away these things. And take your time. It's a process. It's a process. And it also requires application, doing the work. So many best blessings. God bless you. And before I leave off, I like always Romans 12:2. Don't be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So renew your mind to a new, beautiful you. It all starts in here, in here. Love you. Peace.